দার্জিলিং বললেই আমাদের চোখের সামনে ভেসে ওঠে কাঞ্চনজঙ্ঘা এবং ধোয়া ওঠা চায়ের কাপ। দার্জিলিংয়ের চা বাগানের পত্তন হয় 1852 সালে, আর তার 7 বছর পর 1859 সালে তৈরি হয় গ্লেনবার্ন টি এস্টেট। গ্লেনবার্নের বিস্তীর্ণ চা বাগানের মধ্যে দিয়ে চলে গেছে এই পায়ে চলা পথ। যে পথ বেয়ে গ্লেনবার্নের চা শ্রমিকরা চলেছেন চায়ের পাতা তুলতে। 2 শিফটের মাঝে ওরা 1 ঘন্টার বিরতি পান। এখন ওদের দ্বিতীয় শিফট শুরু। ওরা কাজে যান, আমরা বরং ঢুকে পড়ি গ্লেনবার্ন টি এস্টেটের অন্দরে। দেখে নিই চা তৈরির বিভিন্ন ধাপগুলি। এই ধাপের নাম রোলিং। ওয়েদারিং এর পর বিভিন্ন প্রেসারে চা পাতাকে ঘোরানো হয় রোলিং মেশিনে, অর্থাৎ ফার্স্ট ফ্লাশ, সেকেন্ড ফ্লাশ ইত্যাদি প্রতিটি ফ্লাশের জন্য আলাদা আলাদা প্রেসার। রোলিং এর পর চা পাতা চলে যায় ফার্মেন্টেশনের জন্য। ফার্মেন্টেশনের পরের ধাপ ড্রাইং, অর্থাৎ চা পাতাকে এখানে শুকিয়ে নেওয়া হয়। একেবারে শেষ ধাপের নাম শর্টিং। মূলত মহিলারাই এই কাজটি করেন। এখানে চা পাতার আকার, প্রকৃতি ইত্যাদি অনুযায়ী বিভিন্ন ভাগে ভাগ করা হয়। শর্টিংয়ের ফলে আলাদা হয়ে যায় পাতা চা, ফ্যানিংস, গুঁড়ো চা, টি ব্যাগ, এরকম বিভিন্ন ধরনের চা। সব শেষে চা বন্দি হয় প্যাকেটে। পাড়ি দেয় কারখানার বাইরে। পরিপূর্ণ করে তোলে আমাদের প্রতিটি সকাল। গ্লেনবার্ন পরিবারের এক গুরুত্বপূর্ণ সদস্য হলেন সেখানকার হেড শেফ সাবিন মুখিয়া। চা বাগানে বসে তিনি আমাদের জানালেন দার্জিলিং চায়ের ইতিহাস এবং ভূগোল।
Just 7 years after the first plantation. So there is a long history of
It
Glenburn Tea
it
Estate
has,
also in this
yeah, yeah,
area.
yeah.
That I heard there from the manager that some Scottish men who planted there.
Yes, it was. His name was called Kimball Murray.
Okay,
Kimball Murray, and he started planting tea in and was owned by. First, it was owned by a German brothers called the Warnicke brothers. So they, through the missionary, they came, they came to India and they did the missionary thing in Darjeeling area and leased those land from the East India Company or the British and they started growing the tea and through Warnicke brothers and the manager, the first manager used to be, his name was Kimball Murray. Yeah.
okay,
And the Glenburn itself, in the Scottish word, is said that the meaning of Glenburn is the river valley. So you have a lot of rivers flowing around Glenburn. So the first one, which is called Rangeli, the other one is called Rungdung. There's another called Simkola, and the last, the bigger one, is the Rangit. So it's all covered. It's kind of boundary itself is all river.
গ্লেনবার্ন চা বাগানের পুরনো দিনগুলোর কথা একটু বলুন আমাদের।
Since I was born and brought up in tea garden, and both my parents used to work in tea. Actually, or like I'm the fourth generation or the fifth generation in Glenburn, where my ancestor they did came from another tea estate called Jinglam, which is on the other part or other side of this hill. My great great grandfather, he came in there. Well, he was working in tea there, but then just those days in the tea, you know, there was a system which, like, if the sardars or the managers were not happy about your work, you get used to get like just ousted from that tea garden, and they had to go elsewhere to find their job. So that's how maybe there were some conflicts in between, since he was a little educated those days and he used to be a supervisor. So there may be, differences in their, like maybe some decisions so that the managers didn't like him. So he was, just ousted from the tea garden, and he came just searching for a work in Glenburn. In those days it was in the system, and it is called Hatta Baira, meaning that if some people like oppose the managers or the sardars those days, so or didn't go to work. So what they did was they used to you know send that person out from the tea garden, leave all his belonging and go away from the garden. And one of the like the guards, chokidar, what we call chokidar, used to take him till the border of that estate, and from there he was ousted from that area. So he had to leave that area. It's called Hatabaira. Yeah, they used to call Hatabaira. So he came from tea garden called Jinglam and settled in Glenburn many years back. So and my grandfather worked in tea, and my grandmother worked in tea. My father, my mother, both were in tea. Since my father was in accounts and my mother was a tea picker. Although I haven't worked very much in the tea field, but since since in very young age, I've been hearing all these stories about the tea, how it's grown, how it needs to be looked after. So I have those ideas or the knowledge about the little knowledge about the tea in the field. So in the earlier, those days when I used to hear to my grandfather's story, those days were very interesting, very interesting stories. Like, I mean, there was no such rule of child labor. So people didn't have a certain age. Till I know, till up to my young age, there was no Child Labor Act or rules and regulation in tea. So in my grandfather's time also, like those days, like at very young age, because the population was very sparse. So at very young age, they used to take people, like children also in tea, and well, below the age of 18, so people used to get half hajiri or half salary, and in local tea world, it's called chokra. Maybe the English person chokra, which is like in Hindi, it's like a boy chokra. So it became chokra, and with the tongue or the accent of the Britishers. So so my grandfather joined tea in very young age. Although my father, he did his studies and was like lucky to go to school, and it was like very few schools in there. So he used to walk every day like 6 to 7 kilometers uphill to go to school. So although he did his hard work and did his schooling and got a good education, and he joined accounts in tea those days.
বর্তমানে চা বাগানের প্রধান সমস্যা কী?
So now what happened is like it's the tea garden are facing a very big problem of labor issues, because every like our tea garden is also in here only, like every day like 30 to 40% of absenteeism, 30 to 40%. So that's one of the reason where like the teas, as I mentioned you, the teas going towards like the bad phase.
এই শ্রমিকরা আসেন কোথা থেকে?
Still there are certain age group, I would say, certain people still working in tea and they haven't gone out. But then like we saw a group coming down in here, okay? So there were like about 20 to 22 odd people coming to the field work. I mean, if we count them, if we go through a proper their attendance book, there might be 35 people in that group, but then we are left all like 20-22 only now. Out of all that 35, they are working out. Like nowadays, so kya ho gaya? Now leaving the cities, they are going abroad also. So better opportunities, people are working out rather than like tea is a very labor intensive work and it's a very physical work, and people don't want to do it anymore. Like, they don't want to go to work for 8 hours in a day and in a sunny day, and especially during the monsoon where it's all wet from morning till till they take a break from the work. It's all wet. 1 hour break during the daytime. Yeah.
দার্জিলিং চায়ের ইতিহাস নিয়ে কিছু বলুন।
As we go back to the history, this part of India used to belong to Nepal many centuries back. So and since it used to bring, there were bit Nepalese population down here, but later on, they had a war with the Chogyals of Sikkim, and the Chogyal of Sikkim, with the help of the Tibetan army, they defeated the Nepalese army, and that they like annexed this area, certain area, Darjeeling area, to Sikkim again. Now, when the Britishers were in India, so East India, the East India Company, the business people. So what happened was like they were busy doing the business, and they were importing, since it was there was a big craze those days of tea, in Europe, as the royal family of the Britishers were very much into tea. So the higher society was always looking, that was regarded as a very luxury drink, and the people were very on tea. So the East India Company, which was very much a business, like-minded, like business group. So what they did was, like, they used to bring import from tea from China to India, and from India they used to export to Europe. So since it was like a business for them, so they just needed the profit. So later on, what they found was, like, they started planting opium in India, and instead of just like kind of barter way, later on they like started taking opium to China, and in the place of opium they used to exchange it with the tea. And they brought the tea in India, and they exported the tea. So profit both ways, profit both ways. But then later on, when the Chinese rulers came to know about this, they were not very happy about it. They were upset because the Chinese people were becoming addicted with the opium, and the rulers were not very happy about it. So they suddenly stopped, exporting tea to the East India Company, and they nearly had a war. So, although the demand in Europe was plenty, so what they did was, silently the Britishers, they smuggled the tea seed from China to India, and they did plant it for trial in many places in India, like in the Dehraduns, the Nilgiris, Darjeeling, So when the production started, when the production happened, Darjeeling was very unique, in taste, as they call Darjeeling tea as the champagne of teas. So it was very unique, and so it was, that then they spread it on and on, and the whole of the area was cleared, and the people. So although there was a population of Nepalese people in here, so the other story is the land, about the land, how the Britishers came to know about this. So the first Britishers came through Cal, so they settled down in Calcutta, and since it was very hot down there, so they were searching for a place for a summer retreat kind of a thing. So when Dr. Campbell, Dr. Hooker were just exploring towards the north, and they found Darjeeling to be very suitable as a very English weather, and so they reported to their senior officers down in Calcutta that there is a place called Darjeeling. So later on, the Britishers, they, I would say, forcefully leased this part of Sikkim, and started planting tea in Darjeeling, and then they spread the tea in bushes in Darjeeling.
In 1852,
Yes, exactly, 1852. So and for a kind of century, the Britishers were there. But then after independence, what happened was, like, like it had a then India started having a very good tie-ups with Russia. So Russia, came because after the Second World War, the market was fully down, and there was like tea again become went to kind of low stage, and there's no one to rescue the tea. So Russia came forward, a step forward, as a big brother to India, and they started buying tea from India, and all those days, like for the Russians, like Darjeeling, just the namesake of Darjeeling, that was enough for them. And they started buying whatever used to get produced in Darjeeling. They started buying in a very bulk amount. So those were the very golden era of the tea, because they used to fetch a very good price, and whatever produced was all sold, and were taken by the Russian government. So to just match the match the demand, the planters in here started planting another subspecies tea, which is called Assam tea, which is as you see the bush, you can see the difference in Assam and the Chinese tea. Since Chinese was, they had brought it from China, and were already producing Chinese tea in here. Later on, just because this Assam tea is like bigger in leaf, it's much bulkier tea and possesses better weight, if it is after the production also. So they, just to face the demand of the market, so the planters later on started planting Assam tea in here, which is called Camellia assamica. So so a lot of Darjeeling area was now covered by Assam tea, and since they didn't had any, like, since Russia was buying randomly, blindfoldedly, so either it is Assam or Chinese, whatever, like producing Darjeeling tea. So it started buying. Still there are some bushes, Assam bushes in Darjeeling, and the tea produced from the Assam bush is also regarded as Darjeeling tea. But personally, I would say it's little stronger tea. I would say the Assam tea is stronger tea, and the quality varies. The quality varies because, as you see, the Chinese varieties smaller teas, and the Assam ones are the huge ones and contains a lot of sap or the moisture content in it, and it's a little bitter. So it's Assam is more suitable for a production called the CTC, which is crust, tear, and curl, and they mostly down in the plains of Doors and in Assam, they grow this tea and produce that CTC, rather than in Darjeeling we produce more orthodox, which is leaf tea. So that's the difference. Yeah. And as I was telling you about the exploration, like the exploration of Darjeeling by Dr. Hooker and Dr. Campbell. Later on, more, like Northeast India was also like not very well known to the Britishers. So later on, they started exploring towards northeast state of India also. So, and they found that tea was indigenously growing in the Assam Valley also, but then in a little larger leaf and a larger tea tree. So they found a way to make the tea, which is, as I mentioned you, the CTC, Custard and Curl, and they started selling it to like the common man. It's called common man's tea. Well, Darjeeling tea was regarded very luxury and premium tea, and that tea was CTC.
শেষ প্রশ্ন, আপনি চা খান?
Yes, I do drink tea. I do drink tea, and
And what kind of
the
tea you
best for me is the autumn tea.
Yeah.
I like autumn tea because I find it, all the quality and the property and the color, everything is like when you're making first flush, second flush, or monsoon. in a different tree crops. But for me, it's like if you assemble all that tree in one, that is autumn. I find all that thing in autumn. That's why I love autumn tea a lot.
And there is some fruity smell also.
Yes, it does. It does.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
সাবিন মুখিয়ার গল্প কিন্তু এখানেই শেষ নয়। তিনি নিজে একটি অসামান্য হোমস্টের মালিক। সেই হোমস্টের গল্প আপনাদের শোনাবো পরবর্তী ছবিতে।